don't take on criticism of people that you wouldn't ask for advice.
Be a giver than a receiver. If you can mentor and coach somebody to overcome a mental or work-related issue, then it's very satisfying.
It's more about being able to provide an inspirational objective or future for the company or for their team, rather than being an inspiration as an individual.
What should the industry as a whole be doing better to inspire kids to get excited about developing a career in mining?
Our political systems and education systems aren't necessarily producing the right solutions to the problems we have now.
If you find yourself in a leadership role, perhaps you're an introvert and you lack those natural qualities of inspiration, how do you manage that situation as a leader? Sara Prendergast, welcome to Hearts and Minds.
Thank you.
Lovely to see you. Gee, you've got an impressive background. I was doing some research. So you're an experienced finance executive and board director in the mining industry, and you've served with some major international companies as well as ASX mid-tiers and also some leading mining contractors. But to top that off, you've been named in the top 100 globally inspirational women in mining, and you've made the Minerals Council of Australia's list of exceptional women in mining. I'm hopeful that by the end of this podcast, we'll understand why those adjectives of inspirational and exceptional were applied to you. You must be very proud of those achievements.
I am. It's sometimes a little hard to probably accept, but yeah, I am.
Yeah, good on you. Let's get to know you a little bit before we talk about leadership and engagement and culture development. What can you tell us about your early formative years?
Yeah, for sure. I grew up in eastern Victoria in a region called Gippsland. My parents owned a pub and then a restaurant, so I learnt the art of hard work early. When people are having a good time, you're working in those industries.
Yes.
So often Christmas Day and things like that were spent working and serving other people. I think it also probably, they owned the restaurant during the recession of the late 80s and early 90s.
Yes.
And I think that gave me my first insight to the workings of an economy. A strange memory to have, but as a 8 or 9 year old, I remember interest rates on the bank boards and knowing that mattered.
Yeah.
And so I think that probably headed me a little on my path. And also I think growing up in business, you know, as a child, my favourite games were kind of setting up sidewalk stalls and playing business and thinking of things to invent and sell. There were some challenging periods during my growing up as well. There was domestic violence and alcoholism in my household, and later my dad got leukemia, and when my parents divorced, I became his sole carer.
Wow. What age was that, Sara?
I was 13
Wow.
when that happened, and then at about 15 I moved out of home and then went home on weekends to sort cleaning and cooking out for Dad, and I did that mostly to try and focus on my studies, and so I think all those things kind of culminated to give me a big sense of responsibility.
Yeah.
Probably the other last formative thing is always loved school, always loved learning, knew that doing well at school was important. And when I went to university, there was always something kind of a little bit amiss with my education. And when I got to university, I finally got diagnosed with dyslexia. And that was really transformational, probably more as a leader, because what I learnt was where I had been kind of like a B student most of my life, what it taught me is once you learn the environment you need to flourish, and that's certainly what happened for me after being diagnosed with that. I went from that average kind of student to valedictorian of the business and law school. And so that always stays with me in terms of what environment are we providing for people to be their best selves. So I think they're probably kind of what kind of shaped me to what kind of leader and person I am.
What a story. I wasn't expecting some of that. A few things. I mean, being raised in a hospitality sort of environment, I had that sort of raising myself for a while as a child, and it's a full-on job as parents, isn't it? Running a pub or running a restaurant. There's no rest really.
No.
And I do remember the recession that you referred to as well. I think rates got up to about 22% from memory.
Yeah. I can definitely remember them in the 17%.
Yeah. Your dyslexia, how did you and how do you manage that to become, as effective as you are as an executive?
Yeah, for sure. One thing is making sure I have an environment where I can focus. So I often describe a dyslexic's mind as we like shiny things, but easily distracted. And so making sure I can focus when I'm reading is really important. And also being well slept as well is really important. And also knowing to use tools. I mean, we've got so many tools out there now with spell check. Not that I use it very often, but you've got tools that can read aloud to you and all those kinds of things that can help as well.
Yeah. So I guess those tools have become available, in relatively recent times, haven't they? So people prior to the internet, for example, would have been far more challenged, I would imagine, to manage the condition.
Absolutely. I remember the big difference when the university let me write using a laptop instead of handwriting.
Right.
Was a game changer for me in terms of being able to execute quickly in an exam environment.
Look, I'm already beginning 5 minutes into the podcast to understand why you were described as inspirational and exceptional. I mean, what a challenging period of time early in your life to manage. Why did you decide to build your career eventually in the mining industry?
It was definitely the scale of mining that attracted me. My first degree that I did was in economics before I went on to do a master's in accounting. And so I was really drawn to the impact the mining industry had on regional communities and more widely Australia. I also I liked the complexity of it. It was something a bit more tangible than sitting in an office in one of our capital cities in Australia. I also like the sense of adventure. So I lived remotely for probably the first 15 years of my career in remote Australia, and I loved it.
Whereabouts?
In Leinster in Western Australia, Mount Isa in North Queensland twice, and did a fair bit of travel out of Roxby Downs for a while there too with BHP.
Yeah, look, it's a fantastic industry, isn't it? The not only the places, but the raconteurs and the personalities and identities in the mining industry. I remember some very early years up at Goldsworthy in the Pilbara in the early 1970s when Goldsworthy, I think, was the first iron ore company that was built basically for the workers, for the mine workers. And there was no FIFO in those days, of course. You lived on site in a caravan, or if your pay grade was high enough, you got the privilege of living in a house, which was reinforced for the cyclone season. But you never forget those places, do you?
I think in those towns, you get a really great sense of community because everyone is so remote and they're so transient.
So when you're not concentrating on work, how do you relax?
I'm the mother of two boys who are 13 and 16. So they keep me out of trouble a fair bit.
Yeah.
But when I'm not running around after them, what I like to do is usually physical activity to relax. Also just shooting hoops and talking smack with them while we shoot hoops is probably one of my favourite things to do to relax.
You are quite tall. Did you play netball at school?
No, I'm such a waste of potential in that way. I'm rather uncoordinated.
Right.
So ball sports weren't for me, but my country school had a rowing team, so that's where I put my length to use. Yeah.
Good on you. And your two boys, 13 and 16, what at this relatively early stage, what do you think they will be doing in terms of a career?
They're both drawn to the mining industry.
Right.
Their dad works in mining as well in Western Africa, so they've been exposed to mining their whole lives.
Wow.
The oldest one's more into engineering type subjects, so he's just doing year 11 at the moment, and the younger one is not sure what he wants to do just yet. Yeah.
Plenty of time.
Yeah.
Let's talk about leadership a bit. What does leadership mean to you, Sarah? What do you think are the non-negotiable qualities and competencies that leadership needs to have?
In terms of qualities of a leader, I think being able to understand what motivates your people, and also find alignment between those motivations and skill sets to what the business needs to achieve. I think that's really important. I think in this day and age, the skill of creating environments and teams that can collaborate is very important as well. I think there's a growing need for authentic values as well, I think. I think workforces demand that more these days. And so I think that's a very important trait to have as well as a leader.
You raise some very important points there, I think. Understanding what makes your people tick is so fundamental to being a good leader, I think. And the way you do that surely is by having conversations with them. Conversations that not necessarily relate to the workplace, but conversations that help you understand their heritage, their background, their family situation. Because if you understand somebody holistically, as opposed to just the person that turns up at the workplace each day, you get a better rounded understanding of what's important to those people and how best to motivate them.
Absolutely. I think it's such an individual quality to have of why you turn up to work and what makes you tick and perform the best to your ability, and how you want to integrate that into your life.
Yeah. And we're all seeking to build trust-based relationships, aren't we? So I think the authenticity that you mentioned contributes to the building of trust. And very often I think people need to show that they're both credible and they're reliable, and they're prepared to sacrifice their own short-term interests in order to assist and support another person. I think if you can do those things and discipline yourself to do them on a regular basis, that helps to build those trust relationships.
Absolutely.
Guests on the podcast, Sarah, often say that, as you did, it's important for leaders to be authentic, to be your true self. But what if your true self is not particularly attractive or inspirational to other people? So in other words, you find yourself in a leadership role, perhaps you're an introvert, you're a very reserved person, and you lack those natural qualities of inspiration. How do you manage that situation as a leader, do you think?
Yeah, I think even people who have that quality more naturally, we're not all inspirational all the time. We can't all be our best selves in every situation. That's just not what humans are. We're flawed.
Yes.
And so I think one thing that I think about a fair bit is, particularly as we mentioned before, I think workforces are more and more demanding that their leaders be authentic. I think it's more about being able to provide an inspirational objective or future for the company or for their team, rather than being an inspiration as an individual. I think that often gets more alignment and more out of your teams, rather than as an individual leader needing to be inspirational.
That's a good point. And if you look around, whether it be in business or sports, you do see people in leadership roles that are quite reserved. They're not natural speakers. They're not charismatic, but they are respected deeply, and they have built those trust-based relationships, and they set the example, don't they? They model the behaviour that they want their staff to follow. You raise a very good point. You need to pitch a story of inspiration and hope and vision, and then use your skills to ensure the environment is conducive to people collaborating.
Yeah, absolutely.
Will you tell us some of the challenges of either your current role as CFO of St Barbara or recent roles?
Yeah.
What are some of the key challenges you've faced?
Yeah, I suppose since I've become the CFO at St Barbara, we've gone through quite a significant change. When I started, we had just sold our Australian asset at Leonora to Genesis.
Yep.
And we were going from a company that had 3 operating mines across Australia, PNG, and Nova Scotia in Canada, to selling Leonora and putting our Atlantic or Canadian operation into care and maintenance, and having the PNG operation, and looking at project development both in PNG and in Nova Scotia. And so we had to almost grow by reducing in
Yeah.
size and almost going the opposite way that most small mining companies usually evolve. And so we were operating, or we still are operating, in jurisdictions that historically are a little bit challenging to get permitting and to advance projects in. We've been really fortunate, maybe not so fortunate, it's been a lot of hard work and a lot of skilled people. We've now progressed quite a bit where we're seeing light at the end of the tunnel there, but it has been quite challenging, both from a cultural dynamic, making that shift, and also in terms of operating in those jurisdictions.
So presumably you've reduced your headcount somewhat from having 3 operating mines to the one in New Guinea and projects under development. How did you manage and maintain the morale within the team when they see a reducing company?
Yeah, I think it's about providing really clear direction in where we're heading. I think that's been one of the challenging things too, is we ourselves as leaders are kind of building the road as we're asking people to walk on it when you're in project development. And so being really clear about what you do know and what you don't know has been really important. Also really engaging people's skill sets and utilising them to the best of the best fit has been really important as well.
So when you're on the road to attracting key managers or executives into your business, what's the value proposition that you pitch to them? I mean, most people would look at the history of St Barbara, the historical story of St Barbara, and perhaps some would say, well, it's a company reducing in size and operations. Why would I want to join a company like that?
I think that definitely what I was attracted to in staying and taking on the role is the challenges. So being a smaller company, you get a wider breadth of experience and exposure. But also there's probably not many businesses where you would face the challenges that we've overcome in the last little while. And so that really increases your development and your growth. What would normally take 10 years to experience is really compacted. I wouldn't say necessarily a business like ours is for everybody. And it's probably one of the things that I underestimated at the start of the kind of characteristics that are required in a smaller mining company that's focused on project development. It requires being a bit more comfortable with ambiguity, with problem solving, and that complexity as well, particularly in operating in jurisdictions like PNG. You know, you're constantly facing new and unforeseen events.
Yeah, that's so true. You've certainly demonstrated resilience as a company. You mentioned people operating under volatile conditions. We often refer to them as VUCA conditions, VUCA, so volatility, uncertainty, complexity and ambiguity. When you're looking at recruiting somebody, how do you sort of get behind the facade to understand whether someone can operate under those conditions?
Yeah, and that's probably to show my cards completely. I wasn't very good at that to start off with. And I think it's really understanding how people, how comfortable they are without the structure. I think in a lot of big organisations where you have processes and structure. And so I think you can often gauge that by the types of questions that they have in regards to what processes and systems that you do have. Also just getting a feel for in terms of what kind of questions you can see that person being interested in terms of asking about the long-term future of the company. You can see whether they're excited by the breadth of opportunity or whether that kind of makes them a bit uncomfortable.
Yeah, good point. And I guess you're also looking for somebody perhaps that in their past has been battle-scarred. You know, they've been through challenges and uncertain periods with previous employers and they've been knocked down and with the support of other people they've got back on their feet and they've survived and prospered. So if you see evidence of that in someone's background, I suppose that's somewhat reassuring to you?
Absolutely. It's a really great point. I think those battle scars and whether you want to call them failures or learnings along the way are really important. I think they're important for confidence in a funny kind of way, because you learn that you can get back up and that those learnings or failures aren't final. And I think it makes you a bit more confident in backing yourself and knowing that that you'll work it out.
Yeah. Well, failure is a great teacher. It's certainly a better teacher, I think, than success in many ways. You know, as long as you reflect on behaviours or actions that you did that perhaps were inappropriate, that led to a failure or an error, as long as you take the time out to reflect on it and, you know, with the help of other people as well, get supportive feedback as to how you could improve behaviours in the future. I think that's such an important part of being a leader as well.
Absolutely. I think you notice a difference when you're interviewing someone who's really struggled with that failure and still stuck in it, versus to someone that's really taken that growth mindset and kind of learnt from it and has pulled apart the positives and has moved forward with that knowledge and embedded themselves from that experience.
What do you see as one of the biggest challenges in the mining industry in Australia today?
I think mining is becoming more complex because the ore bodies are becoming more complex and the grade is declining, and so that makes our operations more complex and requires different levels of people and technology. I also think that we've probably got a wider issue with Australian mining in terms of productivity in Australia, and I think that really culminates when you're looking at those more complex ore bodies and what we're needing in the future to move forward. So I think when you bring all of that together, we're really needing an environment that really nurtures innovation and thinking outside the box, and that really brings together that skilled people element and technology as well.
You're right. I mean, mines are getting deeper and deeper these days, aren't they? Because technology allows us to make what was previously an uneconomic deposit feasible. So the complexity is most definitely there. And I guess, you know, Australia's got a great reputation globally as being a tremendous mining skill set. What we're less able to do to varying degrees is the processing and the refining part of it. We simply cannot, due to labour costs and skills, replicate what China does, for example, in terms of secondary and tertiary processing of our minerals.
Yeah, agreed.
What's the number of people graduating from universities, certainly in the more technical disciplines like mining engineering and geology and metallurgy, they're diminishing. We're not producing as many graduates as we used to. What should the industry as a whole be doing better, do you think, to inspire kids like you have, 13 and 16-year-olds, to get excited about developing a career in mining?
Yeah, I think coming from the East Coast and knowing a lot of young people over there, I think different to Western Australia, I think every second person knows someone in the mining industry in Western Australia. But in Victoria or New South Wales and Queensland, less so. But where mining is not so well known, I think it's really about telling our stories. I think, and I feel like we've been talking about this for a long time in the mining industry, but there's still a lot of preconceptions about the mining industry and not understanding the breadth of careers. I think letting people know that there's careers in environment, you can make a real difference being an environmental professional in the mining industry. There's, roles in health and accounting, as well as the traditional technical professions as well. And I think it's also talking about the opportunity that's here, not just in terms of role diversity, but also development, lifestyle, wages are obviously very good as well. And so I think it's telling those stories and making it a bit more approachable for people. I recently had a family friend come over and visit, and her daughter, who's 16, has been wondering what to do and never exposed to mining. So I took her into the office at work and took her around and spoke to all the different types of accountants. And by the end of that, she was really excited about the industry. And I think that kind of shows, I mean, we can't all take a person into the office, but I just think that goes to show when people are exposed to the industry and it becomes a bit more approachable, that it is very exciting for people.
Yeah. Education and marketing is what it's about, isn't it? And, these days, mining companies employ data scientists and robotics engineers, jobs that really didn't exist not that long ago.
Yeah.
But with the rise of AI and automation more generally, the career opportunities are getting wider and wider.
That's right. I think there's something for everyone. I think also understanding the impact mining has on so many different industries. I think there's still that perception of mining being, that brown coal kind of mindset where people don't see that it's a solution for renewables and the strong link between renewables or the strong link between our everyday modern life, how integrated the need for mining is.
Yep, very true. Now, here's some rapid fire questions for you Sarah. We live in a troubled world. What gives you hope?
The spirit of humanity that good always overcomes.
Yeah. At any moment in time, most of us are in some form of transition. Does that apply to you? And if so, what crossroads are you approaching or are you at the moment?
I think I touched on it before. The one I keep thinking about is my kids suddenly getting older and turning into young adults.
What's a big risk the world is not paying enough attention to?
I think that our political systems and education systems aren't necessarily producing the right solutions to the problems we have now. I think maybe those systems need looking at. They might be a bit outdated and can't be as responsive as the world needs them to be to make the right decisions.
Looking through your rear vision mirror, what accomplishment are you most proud of?
In regards to people, those breakthroughs you have with someone when they've been grappling with a development kind of hurdle or a growth hurdle or mindset kind of hurdle and they overcome that. And you're kind of like, yes, I got that. I think they're the ones that I reflect back on thinking, if you can be a little part of someone's growth journey, that's pretty cool. Yeah,
it's certainly more rewarding to be a giver than a receiver, isn't it?
Yeah.
If you can mentor and coach somebody to overcome a mental or work-related issue, then it's very satisfying.
Yeah.
Looking ahead, what personal or career boxes do you have left to tick?
I'm pretty excited to see St Barbara be recognised or realise its full value. I think it's been a really great journey to be on, so I'd really like to see that happen. On a personal front, I think at some point I would like to do something that gives back to underprivileged kids and education. I think there's something in that I would really like to be a part of, whether it's a bit of a side thing or whatever. It's something that I'd like to do.
Yeah, good on you. What talent do you have that you're not currently using?
I'm not a bad cook, but don't always get the time I'd like to make a more extravagant meal. So yeah,
you have 2 teenage boys; they should be doing the meals.
They should.
Now we're all a work in progress. What's an aspect of your leadership that you're keen to further improve?
I'd really like to improve giving rich live coaching. We talked about before that there's a lot of introverts in the industry, and I'm certainly one. And so sometimes I think I take too long to think about things and then play it back. But I think there's a real value in the moment giving people feedback, and I'd like to have better clarity and presence to be able to do that.
What inspires or energizes you the most?
Like I just mentioned, I'm an introvert, so a bit of quiet time never goes astray. But also being surrounded by smart, driven people is pretty energizing.
And what drains you of energy?
Just to be boring, probably the opposite thing. I think it's people that sit in problems and can't think about what the options are or explore those.
Yeah. What do you keep postponing?
It's a bit of a administrative home thing, but buying a new car doesn't
Electric or fuel?
Oh, see, I haven't even got that far.
Right.
I just know I need to do it.
What's your media diet like?
I try and keep it quite eclectic on purpose because I like challenging what I'm thinking or what assumptions and biases I have, which can sometimes be pretty uncomfortable. Also, having the boys, they expose me to a lot of things on YouTube that aren't through your traditional media channels.
It's quite addictive, YouTube, I find.
It is. You can really go down rabbit holes, can't you? Yeah.
Who would be a leader, living or deceased, that you'd really like to have a conversation with, and what would be the most important question you'd ask them?
Yeah, probably more because it's recent. One of the rabbit holes I went down on YouTube was an ex-Prime Minister of Singapore, Lee Kuan Yew.
Oh, yes.
He really grabbed me because he transformed Singapore into I suppose it was third world into what it is today. And that really interested me because the first thing that grabbed my attention was that he got rid of corruption. And I think that's a really hard thing to do in those environments and requires quite a lot of conviction in your values that a lot of leaders, they get tempted at some point to falter there. And so that was one of the YouTube rabbit holes I recently went down. And so I think he would be an interesting person. And what I'd be, one of the ideas that I often reflect about now is whether with social media, our political leaders actually have the space to make transformational change because we're so got such a short time horizon.
Cycle.
And with social media, we're even quicker to kind of make our judgments and our assessments. And I wonder if someone like him would have been able to make such a transformational change in today's environment.
Yeah. Really interesting that you mentioned Lee Kuan Yew. I read a book last year, I think, written by, maybe it was a couple of years old, by Henry Kissinger, the former US Secretary of State, and I think he's dead now, but he lived into his 90s, and he spent 60 to 70 years as a diplomat. And he wrote a book called Leaders, and what he did was provide a summary of the 10 most inspirational and effective leaders that he had personally come across during his career, and Lee Kuan Yew was one of them. Yeah, and such a remarkable man. You're right, he really built Singapore from, a former colony to such a dynamic business state.
Yeah.
Remarkable leader in many ways.
And that cultural diversity that sits in harmony there. And he was a tough man as well. Hence why he's captured my attention lately.
Yeah. What's the best career or business advice you've been given?
Don't take on criticism of people that you wouldn't ask for advice. So I think sometimes, especially when you're younger, you can put too much weight on some of that criticism until you put it in perspective of what's going on for that person or whether it's a person you aspire to be like.
Final question. What advice would you give your 20-year-old self to help you build a better quality life?
I think when I was younger, I was always in a rush. And I think in hindsight, I would probably say don't rush it.
Yeah.
I think I was definitely had these ideas of certain timeframes that in hindsight don't matter. And the richness of the experience is really what it should be about rather than ticking a box by a certain age. Yeah.
Don't sweat the small stuff, as some people say. Sara, been delightful talking with you. Thank you. I mentioned at the very start of this conversation that I was curious to know why you were labelled as inspirational and exceptional, but I'm beginning to understand why. You've had some real significant challenges in your life. You've apparently overcome them, and you're a very interesting and good conversationalist. So thank you very much for being part of the program.
Thank you for having me.
And thanks to Harry on the production desk at Podwave Studios, and to Carol and Alana, my colleagues, for helping put this podcast together. See you next time.
Thanks for tuning in to Hearts and Minds. If you enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to leave us a rating or share it with a friend. And don't forget to follow us and connect on social media for updates on all of our upcoming guests. I'm Alana Bray-White, and I look forward to you joining us for our next episode.